So this video is going to go over sex estimation on the pelvis. So just really quick to go through the features that we're going to be looking at. This is a full male pelvis. So what we're looking at here, you can see we've got the pubis, we've got the ischium at the bottom here, and then the ilium coming up. One of the features that we're going to be looking at here is the shape of the pubis. So this piece right here. Then the pubic ramus, which is going to be this piece. The subpubic angle, which is the angle between the two pubis bones, between the ischiums here. And we're also going to be looking here at the subpubic shape, so whether this is a V or more of an upside down U. If we look from the top down, one of the features will be the sacrum, so this here, right here, if it curves in. And then the flare of the ilium. So here's our ilium, of course. Does it come out to the side? Does it angle out, or is it vertical? More vertical here. And then on the side, we're going to be looking at the greater sciatic notch, so this notch right here. So I'm going to pull out the female. So as I said, this is the male. So let me grab the female here just for comparative purposes. Oh, okay. So when we're looking at both of these, what you can see here is that subpubic angle, we'll start there, on the male is very angular, very triangular, whereas on our female here, it's much more curved. I'm going to turn her a little bit. So let's try this direction. There we go. That's a little bit better here. So you can see here we've got the curvature, so more of a U-shaped or a concave look to the female, where we have more of a convex look and more of a upside down triangle in the male. Also, looking at that same area, you can see that that's a very narrow angle in the males, whereas in the females, that's a much wider angle. So the subpubic angle in males is narrow, subpubic angle in females is wide. While it's easier to see that on the full skeleton, or the full pelvis, we can also see it on the individual sides. So here we have a male, and again, you can see that area angling out and being very narrow, versus our female. If I pull the female out, you can see how that area is much wider, that angle is much wider, and how it's concave, how it pulls back. Next thing, kind of in that same area, right here we've got the pubis bone. You can see on the female it's much squarer, okay, much wider, whereas on our male, the same area here, you can see it's much more of a triangle. So triangular pubis for male and more of a square or rectangular for the female. Now right next to that you can see the obturator foramen here, and you should be able to see when looking at the two of these that the female obturator foramen is more triangular shaped, whereas the male is more of an oval or teardrop. So here we've got that more oval shape, and that corresponds with, of course, the pubis shape being more triangular in the male, and then here we have kind of more of a triangular shaped obturator foramen with a more rectangular pubis on the female. If we move over to that greater sciatic notch, you can see between the male and the female how there's a really big difference here. On the female, we've got a very wide greater sciatic notch, whereas on the male, it's a very, very narrow greater sciatic notch. Now, if we go back over towards the pubis area, right here is our pubic ramus. So the section between the pubis and the ischium. On a male, this area is going to be wide. And you can see coming off the pubic symphysis how it stays wide all the way down to the ischium. Whereas on our female here, coming off the pubic symphysis, you can see how it pinches and then widens back out. Okay, so right below the pubic symphysis, you can see how that pubic ramus is kind of at a pinched angle, whereas on the male it's wide. So wide pubic ramus, that's our male, and narrow pubic ramus, that's our female. Okay. The last two features are much easier to see on the full pelvis, so I'm going to bring those back. This is our female full pelvis, and if you notice on our female here, we have this very large, wide pelvic opening. Okay, versus on our male, when I pull him in, you can see that it's very narrow. It would be hard for a baby's head to fit through that opening, whereas on our female, it's much easier for that to fit through. You can also look at the shape of the sacrum. So the shape of the sacrum in our male is much more curved. It's curving into that opening, whereas on our female, it's much straighter so that it stays out of the way of a baby coming through that opening. Lastly, we're going to look at the ilium itself here and how it flares out. So when we are looking at that, if we look at it from this angle, you can see on the females how the ilium itself flares out to the sides. It kind of comes out versus being more vertical. Whereas on our male here, when you look at the male in that same angle, the ilium is more vertically oriented than laterally oriented. So again, that has to do with supporting the baby during pregnancy in the female versus actually passing the baby, which would be our pelvic outlet here. So to recap, in general, the features on the female are all going to be large, whereas the female features on the male are all going to be small when we're looking at sex estimation from the pelvis. We can look at sex estimation on the pelvis either from the full pelvis or from the individual os coxa bones separately. So overall, that's going to be your sex estimation from the pelvis. Make sure you also watch the video that's sex estimation from the skulls.